Could be a quick episode. Let's go.
I agree. Let's make it that.
Welcome to Rules of Villainy episode 30, where three new trading card game players quest and challenge their way to the competitive top tables and discuss their opinions on Disney's Lorcana. This week, we'll be discussing the latest news in Lorcana, and boy, is there news, answering your questions and going over the latest developments in the metagame. I'm Villain Vince, joined by my two co-hosts, Villain Andy, and the Villain Mayor of the Eco of Lorcana, Brad. How's it going tonight?
What was that for? What was that for, Vince?
I don't know, because you started this whole thing by riling me up over here.
I just wanted to show you, that remind you and prove to Andy that I even told you this tonight at League that Mufasa is not a meme deck, and taking down your Ruby Amethyst with little to no sweat. A little bit of sweat. A little bit.
Listen, do we need to go over by the play-by-play here, sir? Because you were definitely sweating.
In the second game, for sure. But no, it was a lot of fun, and it was great practice. I've been having so much fun with that deck. I don't know why I didn't play it this weekend.
Are you saying that you're making sure your dreams don't stay memes?
Yes.
Okay.
But
That's good to hear.
They're not memes.
I'm surprised
your dreams are not
take the
memes.
opportunity here to dig at me, though. It's like, of course that deck worked against Vince.
Well, yeah. I mean, that is true.
No, I don't think
It's
I don't
also
take
true.
It that way.
But no,
if
I
there's
watched
anybody who's played Ruby Amethyst long enough. Vince, playing against him is great practice because he never switches off of Ruby Amethyst. He's tried a few other decks, to some success, but when I think of Vince, I think when anybody watches this podcast or knows, maybe me, I jump around a lot. Now, I'm known for Blurple mostly now, but Vince has always been from set one, Ruby Amethyst, old tried and true, right? That's not anything that anybody would dispute.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Ruby Amethyst is a bad spot these days with how fast things are going. Ruby Amethyst does really good at drawing cards and building up to a late game, closing it out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't go as fast, and a lot of the decks that are trying to go faster spend their time trying to avoid the things that Ruby Amethyst are sending their way. So
yeah.
But we've got a lot of news because you know what, we were been talking about Ravensburger. Hey, we would like some news, and then we're like, okay, well, forget the sprinkle of news. We're just gonna open the fire hose of news at you, and so we got a bunch of news. Although
I don't know if I'd call that
Worlds, please.
Yeah, I also don't know if I'd
a date for Worlds.
I don't know if I'd agree with that statement there.
Right.
This was an accident. This was a big happy accident. Ravensburger or someone there posted all this to the website, and then Ravensburger was like, all right, fine. Guess what? Here you go. Here's a bunch of announcements. So we got lucky.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. But nonetheless, we still got reveals, and even though the official reveals began February 10th, we already have some reveals from Arcasia's Island. We have new classification, at least one that we know of. Illusions from the Iago giant spectral parrot. We have a new keyword, vanish. When an opponent chooses a character for an action, banish them, which is also on that Iago. And then we've seen a handful of dual ink cards.
How about that? Imagine it being Friday, this past Friday, and this evidently leaks out, right? And I know that this day we are going to be publishing our podcast, as we do typically on Fridays, knowing that in one of our questions in Constituents Corner, Andy doubles down again that, and we all were pretty much in agreement that they weren't coming for a while, that dual links are not coming this set. Very much likely not coming this set. And then we see this Bell card and this Beast card, and we're like, well, we're about to publish something that's completely dated now. but it was the weirdest feeling.
I mean, it happens. It happens. Yeah. I think the real key thing to me, though, is just in recapping all the predictions of how dual ink cards work, which we still don't know 100% how these work. So just a footnote here, still speculation territory. But some things we can rule out is the whole if you've got ink A, ink B, you can do these actions. We don't
Right.
see that as of yet. Not saying that doesn't come into the game in the future, but it seems like that's not the route they're going for all of them, at least, right? It does seem more of a
It could still
standard
have them.
card. They could, no, I said,
because they do already have the if this this.
That's what I just said. I said that that could still come, but we had said that maybe that's what they'll do for kind of them as
Like
a
all of them.
category.
Yeah.
And so we know that that's not true, at least.
I think it also leans heavily towards, like, again, it's speculation, but I think the way the cards we see here are presented, they lean heavily towards you have to play both colors.
I would almost verge on the fact that that has to be the case, because otherwise the rules are going to need a serious amendment, because the rules very specifically say you can only play 2 ink colors in a constructed deck.
Yep. That's the point I made yesterday at our set championship when we were just discussing it all, in between rounds, where I think the rule that only 2 colors per deck is going to supersede anything else, right? There we had speculated whether or not this a red-blue card could be in a red-purple deck, and so on and so forth. And the way these cards read, it seems very much catered to the identity of the decks that we have now, the red-blue decks and the blue steel deck, or the purple amethyst steel decks. So I would think logically that is the way it's going to go, but we won't know for certain until February 10th.
Yeah, I think I would actually be more surprised if they don't do that, because I think that would just make the game significantly more confusing. It's like, well, I can only play 2 inks. Well, so no, if you're playing dual ink cards, you can play whatever dual. Like, I think that just goes down a route that doesn't make a lot of sense with how the rules are currently framed. So, like I said, you're definitely right. It could happen. I would be very surprised, I think, if that were the direction we were gonna go.
Imagine you can play it in any deck, like Ruby Sapphire, you can play it in any Ruby, and you just load your deck up with all the Ruby X cards, so like Ruby and every other color, and then you have like all Ruby cards, and then you have like one of another color, and then they have no idea what a second color you're playing. You're just inking all these dual ink cards, and they're like, well, Ruby's in all of them, so I think Ruby's one of the colors, but what's the other one? It could be any one of these. And,
I
be bonkers to try and cast and stuff.
It violates the identity of ink colors, which we talked about I think a lot in this whole dual ink / colorless kind of category is that ink identities have to mean something, otherwise the game just becomes find the best cards to put in your deck, which, I mean, obviously you're going to do that within the framework of the game design, but those cards, ink colors combinations, have very specific identities that they're developing out as the game evolves. And so I think this would be a really weird notion to be like, forget that. Do whatever you want with all these ink colors. But are there any cards you want to talk about in specifically? So we've seen Jafar, newly crowned, Beast, frustrated designer, Belle, mechanic extraordinaire, Lady, Miss Park Avenue.
Speaking of Lady, I clipped a part from the podcast even last week when we talked about it. Or maybe the week before. I kind of alluded to the fact that I had questions based on the art of this card. Her necklace was amber. She was wearing a green hat. And I said something on the podcast. So, like, I got questions about that. And sure enough, they released her as one of the dual ink cards. And I felt really proud of myself on that one, honestly.
When you play this character, you may return up to 2 characters with cost 2 or less from your discard to your hand. So 5 cost uninkable, 4/4, 2 lore, shift 3.
Yeah,
so
it's huge.
Good lady targets would be nice, but
I think whether or not that's playable or not really depends on it's
shift targets. The other thing that really stinks though is that, like, shifting this on a 3 is essentially worthless.
Yeah,
you at best you have like 1 card, unless there's some value in like dumping your cards or something like that from your hand. So this is sort of a later game shift.
Yep.
Yeah.
Or just play it outright. But it is uninkable, so it's
I think
rough.
it looks really good for Lemon Lime aggro though. I mean, Lemon
Full
Lime aggro
4
right
stat
now is
line
all
nice.
yeah, and it's already rough. I played a new guy at the collector store on Friday who, without a turn one, I was fortunate that he didn't have a turn one, or I would have lost probably both games. He did some crazy stuff with Olivia and you came back that we've seen with Izzy and we've talked about in the past where that deck moves
Yep.
fast, and now you got the recursion from this lady coming in. Ideally you're trying to get to 20 before turn 5 anyway, or turn 5 or 6 era, but she's just going to help keep that hand because you run out of the draw in those fast decks like that, right? So pulling back those 2 costs from the discard is going to be absolutely crazy. And yeah, I'm looking forward to see what she's shifted on and what that deck can do.
Yeah. What do you think about this Bell mechanic extraordinaire? So 9 cost, inkable, 7 strength, 7 willpower, Floodborn, Hero, Princess, Inventor, Shift 7, Salvage. For each item card you put, for each item card in your discard, you pay 1 ink less to play this character using her shift ability. And then repurpose whenever this character quests, you may put up to 3 item cards from your discard on the bottom of your deck to gain 1 lore for each item moved this way. And it's quests for 3 as well.
Bad. No, I mean, you might
straight up bad. Why?
So I think it falls into the same category as like an Oswald or like the Queen. I'm not saying you can't make it work in the right meta. Items can be, the item packages that exist are very, very powerful. Oswald getting you a free dime off the top on like turn 3 or whatever is kind of bonkers. And even the Ariel, the infinite untap, and the other Ariel that just gets 5 lore. All these item things are really nice, but they do nothing to really control the game or maintain your tempo or momentum. So especially with the game and the meta going faster, I think it will just sort of be like a win more card. You'll have to have already used Hiram and succeeded. Maybe it kind of replaces Tamatoa, but we would need like more useful shift targets for it. But it's just,
yeah, you would never shift her on strange but special, right? You'd have to basically do the inventor. I don't think there's a red target currently.
Well, you get a +1 lore gain if you shifted it on the strange but special. If you because it's 1 lore per item sent back, and you can send up to 3 items. Yeah. So if you sent 3 items and then quested with her, that's a 1 lore positive, net positive, which isn't terrible. But
it's a one-time use, right? Because
it's one-time use.
So,
and then
the other one would continually quest for 5, but that's also dependent on your inkwell though too. So
yeah, it's just one of those things where I think it's another nice item package that could definitely work, but it really depends on the meta and depends on some of the items. If we had some maybe more removal based items, or some things that maybe lock down questing or lock down maybe like an item that like pay and exert to give something reckless, right? Or stuff like that where you could control the board with the items, then it would be much more viable.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. I mean, I'm excited to play it. I think one thing that actually kind of strikes me about all of these is and one thing going back to our Dual Ink kind of conversation is I am a little somewhat surprised that we're not seeing more. It seems like the route we're going here is that while this card it can be played in Ruby Sapphire, the card itself still leans towards one identity over the other. Because this does still seem to kind of be a very much like what I would probably say, like I wouldn't be surprised to see this on like just a Sapphire card, right?
Yeah. It's aerial, it's items only, right? So there's, I think you're right. There's not too much to it. Same with the Jafar here. The Jafar is during an opponent's turn. Whenever one of your illusion characters is banished, you may return the card to your hand. I mean, Jafar has historically been in Amethyst and Steel, so it's neat that he got an Amethyst Steel card. But really, the like banish return to your hand aspect is an Amethyst thing. Dr. Facilier has that. There's a couple other the Flotsam and Jetsam. One of them has it. So I think you're right. It seems like these kind of lean towards one or the other. I'm curious to see if any of the, any of the cards get more identity, like, because they're not as great, right? Like we talked about how if you're forced to play these two in the same ink color combination, that something like Amber Sapphire could then get an even stronger ability. So I'm wondering if maybe we're seeing Ruby Sapphire have these because, Ravensburger knows and knew a long time ago that maybe these would be the more powerful ink combinations. So they just didn't get as more powerful of cards. Or maybe, they just lean heavily towards one or the other.
Yeah, I definitely think that's probably true. Also, I mean, we saw this kind of with locations as well. Like, we maybe get one or two kind of really solid locations that are super playable in the meta. And that may be the case here, that like maybe we're not seeing all of the more kind of mixed identity cards here. Because what we're seeing, and I mean, from the
Sven actually looks like he might be one.
Yeah, right. I did see that with the rush and then the negative
minus strength,
3 strength. Yeah,
that's kind of a Sapphire thing.
Yeah, it seems to combine those two. So I think we'll maybe hopefully see more of those. And I mean, I would ask you, do you think that card's playable in Blurple?
Sven, no. Brad thinks it is.
Why would you think that?
Brad said he thinks it's better than Elsa. All right, next question.
I absolutely said that, and everywhere that everybody was arguing about it today. No, it's. I agree with the people who said it's good for limited. The sealed that when you get this in the sealed events in the opening weekend or draft in the following weekends.
Definitely not bad.
It's not bad. It's not going to replace Elsa. I feel like the negative strength helps reduce the bounce package, takes the damage off. I would never play it over Elsa. I don't know what the rest of the cards are coming out that's going to make this any better. Yeah, so Sven Shift maybe. No, if the argument's straight up between it and Elsa, it's always Elsa, right? But I feel like there could be benefits that this card could have. I just, I don't know, and I'm more willing to experiment with it.
You play 4 Elsas though, right? In your deck,
yes. Yeah,
this might be a one of card. You don't think so?
I don't know.
What
At
value
least in
does
the current state? Yeah.
Yeah, the negative strength is the only thing it really brings value to, and I think most of the time, Blurple isn't particularly worried about reducing their strength. They're already going to be making more positive trades with things like foxes and crabs.
I'm actually more interested over this Sven that was just announced today. I'm more interested in the combo of Iago and Alice. Alice on 3, Iago on 4, because not only does he have the vanish ability to banish it with an action, you can give it ward, and it's evasive as well. So it's going to be really, really hard to deal with a 4/6 stat line on that. But I don't know. What?
But why?
What do you mean, but why?
So you play Alice, the blue one, right?
Yeah, give it ward. So there's no actions to be played against it, and she's got ward herself. So they're both surviving a couple turns unless you challenge into the Alice, right?
Right.
So
Alice's biggest fear is going to likely be the fox, right? That's what you're. The retaliation you're worried about, and so if I feel like that's kind of a waste of an Alice on the Iago, because then you have a 4/6 evasive, but like they'll just do whatever illusion nonsense they were going to do next turn anyway, and all you get is one lore out of it, right?
Yeah, it's just something I'm tinkering around with. Like I don't know all the cards that are coming out yet, but it's just an idea. The fact that it's a 4/6, if you want to waste a brawl or whatever action, and again, not every single person plays Amethyst, Andy.
No, certainly. I mean, like,
but
in general, I think the big question is going to be how many more of these well-statted illusion cards are there going to be with the vanish effect. And I was talking to several people at the set champions and stuff about this, in between rounds, where it's like, the argument is basically you're playing bad cards in your deck in order to, like these small ones that people talk about, mosquito bite, right? I think it's a popular conversation, or even like painting the roses red or something. One of these cards where you're just doing something silly to them that doesn't really matter. Helping hand, giving them support, right? You give them support, you draw a card, and you think, wow, that's a really positive trade. I just did a 1-drop, got a card, and took out your 4/6 evasive.
But it's a slot in your deck that otherwise
right.
should be something better. Yeah.
But at the same time, if there are enough of these, now, like the value of a card in your deck is oftentimes based on how well it's going to be in the meta you're playing in. And so I'm really curious to see how many other good Vanish cards there will be. And the more of them there are, the more likely people are going to be slotting in these silly little cards and just give your character support and take them down.
I suspect, like, again, as these new keywords get introduced, we will see a handful of cards that have them. But ultimately, like, I think the only value in playing some of these, like, fun actions we don't see will be will be if there's more synergy with Vanish, like we see with the Jafar, which is anytime it's banished with an illusion, you bring it back to hand and stuff. And then maybe like, you need ways to kind of deal with that and stuff. I just like ultimately find that like some of these, classifications don't always fire off the way that like we talk about them at the beginning. And so it's fun to speculate. But there's still like a lot we don't know and a whole bunch of cards that we haven't seen.
Yeah. One interesting thing I saw, I think it was Inkborn Heroes proposed that with this new illusion ability or classification is that it might be a lot like the new Illumineers. We've already thought the new Illumineers quest would be Jafar based. What if Jafar is controlling all these illusions? So instead of the entangled glimmers, we'll have all these illusions that he's casting in a new set. And I think that's a really cool idea.
I do. Yeah. Again, I will just say, please don't make the next Illumineers quest $60.
You're gonna buy it anyway. Make it $60.
I'm still gonna get it, but
I mean, I'm still gonna buy. It doesn't matter. I will. You're right.
The real answer is don't make another Illumineers quest. Make something different. Make something new and more fun.
But and I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna bet you right now. We're not gonna get into depth discussion because we've got so much news. But I will bet you 1 pack of Reign of Jafar, Andy, if that Fabled is a set.
That Fabled is a set?
What pack?
What if it's both a set and not a set?
How about this? 1 pack of every set that is in that you can still easily purchase.
1 pack of every set that you can easily purchase? Yeah, so we're talking like 8-pack bet here?
Yeah.
I thought this was a 1 Gantu bet. I thought I was betting you 1 Gantu.
Yeah, I bet it's a set. I'm just seeing if you're willing to put your money where your mouth is on this one, sir.
I mean, I'll bet you 1 pack. We're not allowed to gamble though, so it has to be. We have to tell people we're just exchanging juice boxes,
exchanging gift boxes.
Yeah.
So all right.
But yeah, I'll do 1 pack. I think it's I think Fable.
You will gift him a pack. You will gift him a pack.
Yeah,
we'll gift
a pack.
Depending on the outcome.
I think Fabled will be an auxiliary product.
All right.
I think there's also a chance that we both gift each other.
Both are right.
Yeah.
That's what
I mean, obviously, if we're both right of some sort, then we just like it's a moot point. All right. Anything else we want to talk about with those releases before we get on to the other news?
I don't think so. I think we covered most of it.
So some big news here is starting with the Reign of Jafar. Ravensburger is going to be moving away from Melee to the Ravensburger Play Hub, powered by Cardi.io. So quite interesting. Actually, I was just listening to the Illumineers earlier before we started this, which if you're not, you should absolutely go check them out. They're great. Brandon just B Squared, who's on a lot of our kind of live streams in the chat, is now a co-host on that stream, on the Monday stream. So you should absolutely
regularly.
Yeah, regularly. Just
Oh,
started.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Good for him.
So he just started doing that, which is great to see him back on Monday nights.
Yeah.
For everybody that doesn't know, they used to do him and John T.
Yep.
Used to do a Monday night live stream. So I'm glad to see that he's back doing the content creation side of things.
Yes.
But they were talking about how there were Melee reps at the NACC and basically like randomly asking folks how to make the app better. What do you like about it? How to do things? And then it seems like that's kind of all of a moot point now because they're moving away from Melee. So what are your thoughts about that?
I won't like go and stand on the soapbox and like give my whole TED talk on all of this, but I will say that I think it is comically fitting that at the essentially the last or potentially last event that Melee is going to be hosting for Disney Lorcana, that they're then asking the indie people how they can do better. Seems like a little too little too late kind of thing. I am very happy about the new partnership. I personally didn't have that many like problems with Melee. I've never, like accidentally left someone in a tournament and have them go 0-0-0 and get top 8 somehow. I know Vince has had some of those troubles, but the Play Hub, Cardio, I think is how it's pronounced. That's how I pronounce it. They did the Lorcana Play Network. So if anyone was back around in the Wild West days of early Lorcana with the digital client that shall not be named, they had several tournaments on there now. The Pixelborn tournaments. Sorry, yeah. Brad gave me a look like, why is he not saying it? People know it's a joke. But yeah, a lot of the Pixelborn tournaments and stuff were hosted on there.
What is this?
And one of the really cool things I thought I really liked was that from tournament to tournament, like your placement would go towards like your MMR. So you would get like this sort of chess elo kind of thing. So regardless of my placement in the tournament, it would also matter. Like, let's say I get paired up against, DeCandio round 1, and then I beat him, right?
Oh, you're dreaming big.
I know, big dreams. But my like MMR would go up like a bunch. My elo rating would go up a bunch, and that was like you had like a ranking across all of the things. So it'll be really cool. I think they've already announced it actually, right? That there will be like leaderboards.
They're tentatively saying they'll do leaderboards.
Yeah, you
as
said
one of the
store specific leaderboards, but
yeah.
I know for a fact that the cardio system has the capability to do like these elo and ranking systems. So I'm really excited to see if we can see like how we rank amongst all of like St. Louis or something like that.
There is a possibility that may occur. I suspect because Lorcana, they want to keep this a very family friendly game and want to encourage the social aspect of the game. Probably won't do that at the beginning, but it may come. I mean, what we know for sure, I think it's what they want to do is make it fun for people to come to League and see where they place in their league, their home store and stuff. And I mean, I agree with you, Andy. I would love to see that. I'm just kind of offering the counterpoint of like, it's like, I think we probably won't see it. As a tournament organizer, what I will say, I certainly hope we get to see is I hope we get to see the ability to put deck lists in
they already had it
system.
Yeah, they already had it.
So that's what I want to see because that'll make running a tournament so much easier for check-in and purposes and stuff. So that's one thing I really want to see.
Some kind of plug-in to export it all to ink decks, maybe, so I don't manually do it like I did last night.
Dreamborn.
Because... So we'll say something about Dreamborn.
Yeah.
So Japan, Ravensburger in Japan, they have an official site to do not only like we can do here to like put all our cards in, but they have an official deck builder.
Yeah, it's like a Dreamborn, but like official.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's probably because it was easier for them to hire like an organization or a person or something to make that. And
Yeah.
but I was gonna say Dreamborn instead of Ink Decks. Not that I don't love Ink Decks. The crew over there is amazing. In fact, I wonder if we could like all three combine. But Dreamborn and Lorcana and Ravensburger have already, or PPG, I guess, have like sort of partnered here, and I really, really hope they continue that going forward. The fact that we can see the day 2 deck lists for like a DLC or Continentals that night, like it ended at like an hour ago, and I'm already net decking Hamza's list and taking it to my locals. It's
66
like
cards.
yeah. So that's amazing. I hope they continue to do something like that. But yeah, they already have deck lists in Cardio. They did in the previous one, and I think that's one of the things that like I was sort of hinting at or whatever, is that like Melee's been saying they're going to have deck list support for a long time now, and they just haven't. And like clearly it's needed, and it's
Listen, I mean, they're a small team from what I understand, so I don't want to, and
I don't want
like, I have not personally had a lot of issues with Melee.
Same.
I mean, every software has its own downsides. Like, I don't really understand why when you drop a person from a tournament, they show up at the end in the rankings. I have no idea why that occurred. But I imagine there's some, every software has certain glitches. I am curious to see how much of the Lorcana Play network gets ported, because this does look like something that's going to be, like Ravensburger kind of owned, if you will, or at least hardcore sponsored. So it'll be interesting to see, like, are they just kind of like porting it over and building a, and kind of using that as the framework, or are they building it from scratch the way that like Disney and Ravensburger want? So I think there's still a lot of questions we don't know. What we do know is that it will be official for the Reign of Jafar set championships. But I believe starting in late February or maybe March, stores will actually be able to run events in it or start to get access to it. So they can do things, but from now, at least through Arcasia's Island, stores are being asked to use Melee for official events.
Yeah, they're a whole company. Cardio, I think their website specifically says that like we specialize in building you an entire like tournament website kind of thing. So they clearly did a very good sales pitch by building the Lorcana Play Network and got the right people at Ravensburger, and I'm happy they did.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's a positive change for the community, and I'm excited for it. But it's not the only kind of news that's affecting stores. We also are moving to a pre-release system versus the exclusive 2-week period that LGSs have. LGSs will now have 1 week, and they'll be giving promos for a buy a box promo, kind of similar to how they handled the Bucky promo in this past set.
The Bucky promo is a disgrace. That was kind of that was an insult to us like consumers.
No.
What do you mean
No?
I
think it was a good opportunity.
A 50-cent card. They nerfed it into a negative 50-cent card, and then they told you had to spend over $100 to get one of them.
From that perspective, I understand. I do agree. But I also think at the same time, there was the first card they errated, right? And I think this was an example of trying to, all right, let's see how the promo, buy a box promo aspect actually works. It's like a test run, right? Yes, it's not a card that's essentially playable anymore, but yeah, you're right. It's $100 for a card that's just.
Imagine this. But, ready? Give me like a $5 card. A card you're like, okay, that's not too bad. Like Fox, right? Fox is like $5 maybe or something like that. Imagine they errata Fox and make it cost. They make it a 4/4 instead, right? Or they do something to make it even better. Basically, Ravensburger could just errata any card and print money. and basically say, okay, well, you want to play with Rapunzel? Fine, Rapunzel's a 1/6 now, but you know what? Got to pay $100 to buy a box, and that's the only way you can get them. Money. I know that's not their intention,
but
that's the way it came out. Was like this. That's ridiculous.
I mean, in fairness, I think LGSs are given a fair amount of discretion on how to give these promos out.
Yeah.
So,
but not all LGSs are great like they are in the St. Louis area. We got a lot of good ones out here.
That's fair. And I agree with the pushback, like on how they rolled that out.
Should have been free.
Ultimately, I'm going back to the whole thing. I will say, as you know, that I have been getting into this game.
Beep.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Do.
This is a podcast within a podcast. This is
yeah, we're gonna. It doesn't really matter what happens here. We're gonna cut this out. I told Vince no Star Wars talk allowed, or I'd cut him out of the podcast.
I'm waiting for the edit for you, like how you're gonna handle putting that over that pack.
What you mean the Lorcana pack you showed us? Yeah, that was really cool.
It was pretty blurry anyway. But no, what I was gonna say, what they did in that game, which I'm a little kind of surprised with, which I don't know if we ever had talked about it as an option, is that if they just had temporarily banned Bucky, because they've done that to a card in a game you don't want me to talk about, Star Wars Unlimited.
Right. They take cards on and off ban lists in other games as well, but generally, I think what I've heard at least is that if it comes off of a ban list, then it probably should have not ever been put on a ban list. And like, it's great that they're like reversing the decision, but a lot of times what that leads to is like they're using this ban list to just try and shift the meta, which means they didn't predict the meta properly when they were designing the game, which means they didn't design the game very well. And like,
I mean, that's kind of true with the Radas though too, right? Like, it's just a card they didn't expect to do well, and so it's kind of the same logic. But like, I don't want to delve too much far into it. I was just kind of one-off mentioning that that's one kind of option we didn't really.
That's probably why they eroded Bucky into non-existence as well, is because they never like. You don't want to ever ban and then unban something. You don't want to errata and then like, oh, well, we need to errata it again. You know, you just have to be sure.
Did you see in that big full art of Arcasia that there's a Bucky back there on one of the tendrils or whatever of the forest? So people are speculating that the return of Bucky is coming in some capacity.
Bucky, I tell you what, Heather will be so happy if Bucky comes back. That's like her favorite card. That Emerald Steel discard package. But so what do we think about this shortening of window and moving to kind of a pre-release setup?
I don't think it'll be too much different. I don't think they said anything about it, but I hope maybe Ravensburger adds some additional, like, I know they added the buy a box promo thing, but maybe they add something additional to the OP kit, or maybe we even get like a pre-release kit for LGS stores. Because we kind of already have like pre-release events, right? Like, I'm already going to do sealed or draft or whatever at all of my LGSs that first week, and it's like, you know, so nothing really changes for me. I'll see it at my Target and start spending money every time I go get milk or eggs, you know, a little sooner.
Eggs cost more than Lorcana packs right now. What are you talking about?
And that's why I buy more Lorcana packs than eggs.
Forget the eggs, get more Lorcana. But yeah, I agree. I do hope this is a window to the fact that we'll see more pre-release products like you do see in Magic and Star Wars Unlimited, and I think even Pokemon does some pre-release stuff, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm not as familiar with Pokemon game as I am.
I think Magic has like pre-release boxes that you can buy. It's like a trove box that it's like sealed, right? You go and you buy a box that you then open up, and it has the packs that you rip open and you make a deck with it and stuff. So it's like a sealed in a box kind of thing. That would be pretty cool for Lorcana.
So I hope that's the case. But now we've got some news that I think will probably be somewhat contentious amongst
Yes.
the folks. So
I'm sad.
they also announced the set championships are going to change a little bit, not in format, at least from what we know, but in pricing. So starting with Arcasius Island set champs, they'll still get the 8 enchanted foil set promos, but they'll have 40 non-foil promos with the same artwork, but standard format for pre-registration incentives. So unclear whether or not that means we're going to get a non-foiled version of the card like we see at DLCs, or if it's more, what it seems more likely is the possibility is we're going to get just standard cards with that artwork on it, like a regular playing card. So unclear.
It's the same thing, right?
No, it's completely clear. It's gonna just be like Rapunzel, foil and non-foil, Baymax, Cusco, foil, non-foil. Yeah. It'll be the same thing. It's gonna be the same because it says with same artwork.
Well, so that in the release it says as a standard card. So unclear.
And that means non-foil. I think they mean standard non-foil.
Maybe we don't. I think that veers into speculation territory.
I think that veers into.
I think it's the exact same thing as the prize wall versus
something
tournament.
that's not there.
Maybe,
top cut.
Maybe.
What do you think? Do you think they're gonna like border it with the same art and make
maybe, like, potentially? I would find that somewhat strange.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, but
either way, it's like it's a bulk card. There's going to be so many of them. So they're going to be worth like $5, and I'm going to have more of them than an actual Bucky. It's ridiculous.
But the standard, so those are for pre-registration incentives. But I think perhaps the most controversial is that we're going down to one playmat for the champion.
Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest, it's only controversial to a lot of people if they announce that the mat will say the word champion on it. I know that is what's going to raise or lower a number of torches and pitchforks out front of the Ravensburg headquarters.
That's half of it, I think, yeah, because I too prefer the non-champion one, just for the cleaner look of it. But I think what a lot of other people are arguing as well is that there's no like the pricing, there's no difference anymore, right? Like because you're working your way up. When the top 8 gets the same pricing as the top 4 does, and now the top 2, I mean, you have one individual thing to play for. But as we've seen in multiple set championships, by the time we get to the top 2 people, it's basically, hey, what mat do you want? So now it might incentivize that game to be played out. I mean, it absolutely will because there's only one mat. But
I feel like
that's why it's being done, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, but I feel like we're just kind of like shuffling around the options here as opposed to just sort of listening to the feedback and stuff. Like when it was top 4 and 2 playmats, we were like, look, it really, really hurts to get top 8 and then lose and get nothing and go home with nothing. So they were like, okay, we'll do, and I think a lot of people said do foil top 4 and regular 5 through 8, for the top 8.
That was my suggestion. Yep.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of times, and I think that's great. And what that does is that would incentivize, now you want to play the top cut because then you get your non-foil, and now you want to play to the next one up because now you get your foil version, and then you want to play the last game to get to your, you got to play that game to get to your mat, and then you play the mat to get to the champion mat. And I guess, that doesn't incentivize them when there's 2 mats and people are just going to do the which mat do you want kind of thing because they're late. It's late and they're tired, but I think, they just kind of shuffled it around. They're like, okay, well, now we're going to do 8 of the same card. And now they're like, all right, we're going to do 8 of the same card and 40 of these other cards and 1 mat. And it's like, well, wait, we never said no, don't do 2 mats. We always liked the mats. We never wanted 40 cards either. Why that? Like, that's so weird.
Yeah. I think at the core of the game... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
I think at the core of the game, and it always has been from the start, at least from the impression that I get from, the creators that, Ryan and all of them, is that they want everybody to have the best experience, to have fun, and going to something and walking away with nothing is never fun. So getting that registration bonus of it, but it's a cool card that you wouldn't get anywhere else, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately you're paying for this tournament to play this game that they love and they put so much passion into creating. that, and then you're walking away at least with a card, right? And then if you do well, you might walk away with a shiny card, and so there's no bad feelings, coming from the top cut. I mean, I'll never forget the top cut of the first set championship that we ran, where Kirsten heard in the top cut, like before the game was even over, that if I win this, I'm just going to sell the card. And I'm like, that's got to be devastating, to, I don't know why I'm getting into that, but like, I want that experience. I want everybody in these tournaments, especially the ones that we put all the effort into hosting for people and give back to have that experience. That I had fun today. I got something out of this. And I think that's what Ravensburger wants to do too.
So I'm for participation promos.
I 100% agree. One of the things that I was somewhat concerned about in moving from 4 to 8 was how would it affect attendance at these events. But
it lowered it.
What I have seen is that it did lower it, but what it lowered it to is it lowered it from the people that came in that wanted to get the prize to turn around and flip it, to the people who play in leagues and are regular players of Lorcana. The people that I see at these events are people I see at League, that I see at other events around in the community, and not just when it comes every 3 months for set championships, but I see regularly.
Certainly.
The people I haven't, there are people in Lorcana that I have not seen.
Except for Jesus.
Since Ursula's return.
He only shows up for set champs.
Well, that's
Boo Jesus, everyone.
I started to play this game here.
Beep. Technical difficulties. do.
But yeah, but I mean, Jesus still comes to League every once in a while. He's just not as much.
I'm messing with him. We love you,
I
Jesus.
I totally know. But my point is like, yeah, it did reduce it, but I think it reduced it in a, I mean, I hate to use the word positive, particularly in that light, because I want people to come. But I think, like what Brad
trimmed
is saying,
the fat.
It really sucks to be like, I want to win this because I want to sell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well, we were saying in the
person that wants to win it to like play it or put it in their collection because they appreciate the game and they really are involved in the game.
So here,
that's how what absolutely killed me in the Ursula set. Sorry, Andy. Real quick anecdote that add on to that is that I want the community that we here in St. Louis, the community that I champion. I've championed 2 Ravensburger in Chicago about how great this community is, and then to see this was pre-Ursula sets where somebody came in who was not part of the community, very minimally part of it. Well, came in, tried in like 2 or 3 different set championships, bubbled out, then finally won one, and the very next day sold it to somebody in the community who actually wanted it for like $200 or something. And I'm like, that person could have just had an opportunity to to win it. I don't think they played in that particular tournament, but it really set a bad precedent, I think. And I don't see much of that anymore at all. Like everybody's going, they're having a good time, they're getting their prizing. Some people are lucky to get higher pricing in the mats, and it's a bummer there's only one mat available now, but it's going to make it more special to that one person. But I just wanted to add on to what you were saying. We don't see that. I haven't seen that personally anymore in the places that I've played or talked to people from other stores where they're just coming in, sniping the pricing and selling it off for the kick. And it's,
for one, at least in our area, Rules of Villainy came to town, and they're not good enough to snipe this pricing no more. We got there's like how many of the top 8 in all of these said champs we've been to?
Quite a few.
A lot of jerseys. Got a shout out to the ROV team for sure.
Honestly, we get a lot of folks that are like, "Hey, how can I get one of those jerseys?"
Yeah,
we get a lot of that. Which honestly,
join our Patreon and find out.
It's humbling. It really is. Like, just,
it is.
Let alone the larger St. Louis community in general, but just the people who have joined us and helped us build what we have here. Seeing them be teammates and the generosity that they've shown and helped with in so many ways. Like we love you guys and appreciate you.
I do want to say, I think that on the point of attendance and stuff, it is definitely quote unquote trimmed the fat, but at least for me personally, being able to get one of the cards and then maybe a play mat or something, I am less incentivized potentially to go some of these other stores, largely because before my incentive for continuing to win more and more of these prizes was to try and distribute them to my friends who couldn't win these prizes. But now all of my friends are just as good, if not better than me at this game, and there are enough prizes for everyone. And so I do think you will have some of that sort of I don't have to play kind of vibes to it, that there will be people who show up and get just the one, participation promo and decide that, that's good enough for them. And they won't try to get one of these cards to get top 8. And that's why I think these sort of tiered prizing, have a participation card. Like Vince said, make it a standard card with a black border or something on it. And then have a non-foil version like the Rapunzel or the Cindy from the DLC. Then have a foil version for top 4. And then have playmats for 1 and 2. The biggest thing, though, I think that we're not considering here is that this is all a loss leader, if you will, I think is the term. It's a cost center for Ravensburger. This is all free stuff that they're giving out to these stores. And so my thought is 40 cards probably costs less than 1 playmat. So they swapped from 40 cards. They swapped from the 1 playmat for second place and said, instead, we'll give you 40 cards, and it makes it, you have more people who are happy. Hopefully, it makes them happy. And it's unfortunate, but I completely understand from a marketing standpoint. I hope Ravensburger just continues to sort of change things up and go with the flow as, we find out that maybe we don't need 40. Maybe you give us 20 and we get maybe a couple extra different ones or our playmat back or something. Or like a deck box, unique deck box, or pins. Pins I've heard is a really good one as well.
Yeah,
people love pins.
I think one of the points I would say is that I think these changes affect people in different ways. Like I will say the fact that like you could go to these events and more folks like you, the top 8 is, to get a card actually makes me more incentivized to play more because I feel less bad. Like when I got my the Stitch card, right, from the first event I played in, I only played in one other event. I dropped out of every other event that I could have played at. And I'm not saying I would have won those, but I
because you got the card.
But I got it and I was like, I want to give other folks a chance. But here, when there's so much more pricing,
I thought you just lost those.
What's that?
I thought you just lost those ones.
No, I only played in one other one.
Oh, you made it sound like you won yours and then you started playing in others, but you were like, no, I feel too guilty, so I'm gonna let these people win their prize.
I didn't like.
That's what I'm gonna start saying. What happens when I go to a set champs after I won and I go like 0-4? I'm gonna be like, I was just letting other people have a shot at the good card.
No, because I just knew how many people wanted those cards.
Right.
Like,
of course,
and so I got it.
Win
at my
them
home
and
store.
then run a second chance event.
Was lucky enough. Well, I didn't know we were like. Had I known that was something you guys were discussing, I may have done things a little differently then. But I didn't.
Had we known, we might have told you. we kind of just brewed that
I
one
think
up.
you guys like figured that out at week 3. You and Ron on the drive down.
We were like, hey, we have a couple extras.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm fine. I think I'm fine with the top 8. I don't think we need to change that. I think it's a little too late to try to reverse that at this point. I'm fine with participation card. If that's what we're gonna do. I just really, really want the 2 playmats. I think like we were accustomed to that. That's what we should keep. If there was any change in the playmats and like the goal is to get to play that like last match, I think instead what they ought to do is versus having a champion playmat and a second place playmat. I was talking this with Megan at game night, is make one of them foil. Like a foil playmat, and then the other one a standard playmat.
Ravensburger, hit up Matified Customs. They're a shop by Brad's buddy Craig. They make fire playmats. Hit them up, get them to make the champion one. I like this idea, Vince. Yeah. This is
first person I ever played in a DLC, and I ran into him in both of the other ones.
How'd it go?
Caught up.
that
You want me to
first
tell
match.
it? I've said it before. No,
Oh.
I too owed him.
Oh,
in Atlanta.
sheesh. That's
Yeah.
why he won't get back to us for that custom rules of villainy playmat. I'm sorry he did that to you, Craig. I'm sorry.
He was playing Jafar Wheel. I was on Red Blue, and yeah, it was. He was really cool. He was
Red
really
Blue?
cool about it. I felt bad. I always feel bad about
Brad
it.
on Ruby Sapphire?
Yeah, you remember those days? That was a
Sheesh.
long time ago.
Sheesh.
But yeah, he ran into him again in Chicago and talked, and then ran into him again in Seattle months later, and we just picked up where we left off. Really cool guy, and I found out about Matified while we were in Seattle, and we were all blown away by his work. It blew up on Twitter like that day, and we're like, "Wait, you do that? That's you? Are you kidding me?"
It was so good because we were chatting with him outside the Cheesecake Factory on our
Yeah.
long line and the long wait to get food outside the venue.
We waited an hour and a half for cheesecake.
Which I don't recommend.
Good company, not great.
Very
food.
good company.
Yeah.
Well,
but
there
yeah,
goes our sponsorship.
Anything else we want to talk about there?
I think we covered it.
Great. Well, we've got a few upcoming events. So we've got we're gonna have a guest spot on the Lorcana After Dark. You want to talk a little bit about that, Brad?
Yeah, if we're publishing on Friday, so we're recording this early. Just a little bit of inside baseball here. If we're still publishing on Friday, that event has already passed. Thursday, what is the date? Thursday? I don't even know. The 30th. We'll be hanging out with Breezy over on his Twitch stream. Lorcana After Dark. Really fun guy, really fun show. I think we just hang out, talk about Lorcana and whatever comes to mind, right? Yeah, he invited us on. I spoke to him just a little bit ago. He told me that I told him that's our league night, we could cut it short, we could not go at all. He said, no, go to league. This is Lorcana After Dark, you can just come in at any time. So gonna be a good time. If you guys want to check that out. I don't know if he has VODs on his channel. I don't know if this is coming out before or after we do it, so stay tuned, I guess, or check the Discord, and we'll definitely let you know that it's happening, and or has happened. And yeah, that's it.
And Andy, you want to talk about our other event?
February 8th, which is some amount of weekends after this, you'll be hearing this. February 8th, 11 a.m. Central Time. It is we're not calling it the 2025 New Year's Spectacular. It's a February 8th New Lorcana Spectacular live stream, but it is a 1.5K. And not just that, we have not only $1,500 in the prize pool, we have an autographed D23 Sorcerer Mickey signed by Ryan Miller himself, the creator of Lorcana, the creator of Gantu in Lorcana.
All hail.
All hail.
All hail.
And he gave it to Kirsten and Rules of Villainy specifically for us to have an event. 2 cases of product for the top 8, as well as a really interesting raffling system that we've got where you'll earn tickets throughout the event, put the tickets in a bin, we'll raffle off all these prizes, including that Sorcerer Mickey, which I'm realizing I have right in front of me now and I can show on the screen. Let's go. Ryan Miller signature.
So pretty, so pretty.
Tons
also,
and tons of Mirabelles as well will be there.
Brad gets a week, gets custody of that card.
Yeah, bring it Thursday so I can at least hold it and look at it for a week before it goes somewhere else, because I still don't have it. I have a couple signed Ryan Miller cards, which I'll always cherish. My Brave Little Taylor favorite card now. But yeah, I will never. I shouldn't say never, but it's unlikely that I'll have a Ryan Miller signed D23 Sorcerer Mickey, and just for a few days would be very make me very happy.
Well, Brad and Vince, whichever direction these guys are from me, will be joining me along with Kirsten and probably a lot of guest casters on this day. We'll be live streaming.
Brad won't be there, unfortunately.
I won't be there, buddy.
Look, I'm going to keep saying he's going to be there, and he's just going to show up, right? It's like you tap your heels together. There's no place like home. The mayor will be there. I
will be there in spirit.
I'm sad again.
So regretful
that
I'm so regretful that I can't make it. It's just unfortunate reschedule and then a conflict on my calendar that I didn't realize at the time for an event that I've been hosting for 10 years, and I didn't want to reschedule that. So,
to be fair, we did we did not pick in a day that Brad couldn't do.
Yes,
We were like,
we picked
can
the day
we
that
do
it
this
snowed.
day?
It was my
Brad
fault.
was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm totally down. And then like we sent out everything yet again for the reschedule. And then Brad's like, I got bad news, y'all.
Yeah, and it wasn't me that realized it, because this is something that I knew. It always happens on Super Bowl weekend, and it didn't occur to me. It's nothing to do with the Super Bowl at all. But it didn't occur to me because I didn't have it on my calendar yet. I had the Facebook invite scheduled. I had all the plans and everything going on. And then Emily, my fiance, she's like, after I sent her the invite for our event at Grapes on February 8th, said, "Hey, baby, you know that's the same day as this, right?" And I'm like, "Oh no!" And I got to tell everybody now that I can't make it.
And that's
felt
why
so bad.
And that's why that's why you're marrying her, because without her you would be at two places at once on the same day.
Yeah.
Kirsten
She
does the
holds me
same thing for
accountable.
me.
Yeah,
Oh.
but I will be there in spirit. I will be there in the chat, when I can, to see how things are going. I'm sure it's going to be. I'm actually really excited to see it from the viewer perspective and not being there, because I know how good you guys do, how incredible of a show you guys have, just from the experience of doing it with you guys. But now I'm excited to be here and see you guys soar without me.
Yeah. Well, with that, we're going to move on to Constituents Corner. So take it away, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Vince. Our first question is from Martin Carr. PS, thoughts on people who buy sealed product over staples and then get upset when you don't let them borrow said cards? How do, that's that
sounds like a personal attack on someone, Martin. If they listen to the podcast, let them know that they've been jabbed at. Shade has been thrown.
For clarity, this question stemmed from a deeper conversation in our Discord. If you guys are interested in joining, check out the link below and join in on those conversations. But Martin wanted to get our thoughts on sharing cards and why not just buy the singles over, just going to buy packs. Start with you, Vince. I know.
I'm going to kick it over to Andy.
Yeah, I think we all are kind of in consensus on this, that opening packs, fun. Gambling, not as great. Make sure you get help. But opening packs, lots of fun. Do that if you want. If you have the means to do that, great. Otherwise, singles are generally a more cost-effective way to get your product. And if you happen to be buying singles, tcgplayer.com, we have a partner link in the description below. You can actually help Rules of Villainy. We get a little bit of cut of the money. You pay nothing extra. All of your singles can come from wherever you want. I think you can even buy not Lorcana singles, even that beep game that Vince is talking about. Yeah. So you could buy any of that stuff. Use our link, and we get a little bit of money on the side from it. But as far as sharing cards go, it really depends on the person. We have a really great community around here. I've made some of the greatest friends that I've known through Lorcana here, and so I never have a problem lending any of the cards that I have out to them. If I'm gonna play with it, they'll play with it. I trust them. I think Vince is the only person who won't lend out a card, and it's his Enchanted Elsa.
Yeah.
I will say Brad did let me play with
out.
his Enchanted Morph, which I think was the first Enchanted he ever pulled, and meant a lot to him. He told me his soon-to-be wife, gave him this card as a present.
She pulled it.
See, he was shedding a tear telling me the story about when he lent me this card. So some friends are better than others, obviously.
You know me, I'm a crier.
But yeah, so it all depends, Martin. I can't tell you to share your cards with everyone. Some people just eat spaghetti while playing Lorcana, and it's not great. Don't give them your cards. But in general, make some friends, share some cards, buy singles with our TCG player link.
Don't lose to your own cards though.
Do you want an Enchanted Ariel's Grotto to play with, Andy? Because
I have 4 of them.
I have one as well.
I've got plenty.
That might be the one Enchanted we all have in common.
The only thing I'll just add to that is that just to tell you how great the Lorcana community is, I've been testing and playing some decks, and I built a whole bunch of decks, and so I don't have like 20 copies of some of these cards, so I've been using proxies to try to figure out what deck I had. And Heather was like, "Do you need to borrow cards to fill the deck?" And then tonight, Brad was like, "Do you need to borrow cards?" And I was like, I totally appreciate it, but no, I do have the cards. I'm just trying. I don't want to like have to like unbreak the deck to play another deck. I just want to go from one deck to the next and stuff so I can build them. But just again, I think it exemplifies like how great the community is to make sure that people are playing. And as Andy has said on numerous occasions, it's like, I would rather you have the cards to play the best deck you can, because that makes the competition better, and it's only going to make you a better player too. And stuff. So when you limit folks to only have the cards they play and stuff, like maybe that does benefit you as a player in the short term. But if you really want to be the best competitive player, you want to be playing the folks with the best decks.
Absolutely.
All right. Question 2. I think we already answered in Underground News. It came from Thick Flare at Lorcana Heat. He asked, with the new reveals today, how are you liking the new Iago with the Vanish ability? Do you guys have any other thoughts on Vanish that we missed?
I'm indifferent at this point.
No, I really like it. I'm curious to see more of them. We'll see if it's how playable it is, especially with the Jafar synergy there. But yeah, we spoke a lot about it earlier, and you probably got your answer there. Final question from Constituents Corner. We have Ali Ultran asking, who wore the crown best, Ursula or Jafar? Who looks more fabulous? He is Team Jafar.
I gotta say, both Ursula and Jafar are queer-coded villains, and Disney has a real problem with queer-coded villains, at least in that era. And so I gotta say, like, man, they both wear it really well.
They do.
I'm a big fan of both of them.
We have to pick.
But if I have to pick, I have to pick Jafar because I'm a big Aladdin fan.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd probably go with Jafar as well. He also has the whole crown, right? Wasn't she just wearing the half Hexwell crown?
I thought she had the whole thing.
I think she had,
but it broke. I thought they broke it when the Illumineers quest. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. I don't know the lore well enough.
I don't either. We should probably get more.
Yeah, we
studious on that.
We need to watch Fabled, the animated series.
Also, here's a nice plug for Illumineers as well that Vince gave earlier with B Squared being there. They did a really great 10-minute video back, I think, right before the EU Continentals. It wasn't long ago, a month or two at most. Where they go through the whole thing, and they have voice acting from Katie at Lorekeeper. Baker, Lorcana villain, did the voice of some of the characters in it as well.
Prepared.
He did it much better.
Yeah,
but
Baker, that is, did it much better.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, man, thank you so much. These are my friends, y'all. Just saying.
We rib each other all the time. But no,
you need to find a different song to sing so you can separate yourself from him.
I know you cannot take somebody else's
signature song.
Signature song. So
even though Brad has officially thrown down the gauntlet and stated that he would like to challenge Baker for that signature song.
Listen, when I did that, I didn't realize how good he actually was.
How many drinks you had? No, how good he was at singing it. Right, okay.
I'm still very good at it to myself in my car, which you'll probably never hear.
Yes.
What I've been jamming to a lot lately, this is off on a tangent, is Be Our Guest. So that might be that, or Friend Like Me would be my go-to now. Maybe one day we'll bust it out on a podcast.
I tell you what, though, you don't want friends like these. Here, let me tell you right now.
These friends are from the other side.
That's great one there. If I had to answer the question, you guys both picked Jafar. I think Jafar looks cool as heck. So I'm just gonna be the other one and say Ursula, because she's, to me, a lot more scary. But
she's pretty scary.
Yeah. And that was any other questions?
She wants to steal your voice.
Yeah, and we can't silence the mayor.
Yeah.
Not at all. Maybe Andy.
Lorcana has there's freedom of speech in the city of Lorcana. So
that's right.
No stealing our voices.
All right.
Yes. If you'd like your questions answered by the villains in the future, be sure to comment on this video on YouTube, our socials, or join us in our Discord, where you can comment in the Constituents Corner channel. And back to you, Vince, for the main segment.
All right. Well, this is going to be a shorter main segment because we went long.
I was going to say, do you guys know we have the rest of a podcast to actually talk about here?
Yeah, well, I mean, we kind of knew this going in that like we're got a lot of news. We're going to talk a lot about it, and so honestly, I will just say the meta has been pretty diverse, and I think we've said a lot
I
of
love it.
this week, and it's great. But the first thing I kind of want to do is I just want to shout out the great community here in the St. Louis area for their camaraderie and the ability, like do great things. Like I was super fortunate. I'm gonna shout out Reckless Ron for giving me, if I can find it in this binder here, this card right here. Let's go here. The Scar. So, won that card at game night yesterday, and I think he tried to like sneak it in my laptop while I walked away, and I caught him. He's like, "Please, you didn't see that. You didn't see anything." But I did, and I really greatly appreciate it, and the fact that like we have such good community members that are doing that. Like, he didn't have to do that, and I cannot say like how much I appreciate it. I like teared up. I was like, "Can I get a hug?" And we know Ron isn't maybe the hug burst type of person, so yeah. So I'll say that, and I'll leave it to Brad.
Yeah, the same thing happened as I was talking to Emily. I had just to give a little bit of preface. I had a lot of hope going into game night on Sunday, and I'll talk. Or do we have time to talk about the games later?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about it. Yeah,
but it didn't go my way the first couple games, and I made some really bad mistakes playing a brand new deck that kind of cost me it. We'll get into those details later, but sometime later on, I was texting with Emily just about, she's asking if I'm having fun. I'm like, I said, meh was my answer. And, she, was giving me a pick me up. Like, I don't like that you're not having fun. And I was like, I just want, some kind of validation. I'm putting all this time and effort into this game and with the, growing this podcast and the love of the community and everything. And I can't find that win, right? Like I do well in leagues and everything, but when it really matters, I falter, and I have things to learn from. But it was Kirsten who ended up sliding me my Scar from you guys as a whole. Just I think you guys talked about it ahead of time, saying that she told me if Brad doesn't win one today, we're going to give him one. And it, at the same time that I was kind of emotionally talking to Emily about it, and then I just broke down because I refused it, like I want to win it, and I have at least one more opportunity to do so. But just the generosity from you guys to provide me that, I would rather put it in the pool for the second chance events for somebody else to,
and when you win at the next set champs,
I will.
You're 100%. Going to, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
we got it
for sure.
You're going to win that one, I believe.
And so that was, hug city after that for all you guys, because I mean I think Andy wasn't around when it happened, but I owe you a hug. But you're probably playing still. I don't know. I'm going off now. And then yeah, it was just incredible. It was, yeah, I told Megan, I told everybody, like out of all the set championships there could ever be in the future, Scar would be the one that I want most. And I think you all knew that, and you came through and gave that to me. And I can't thank you enough. I will give back in some way to make that make up for that, because that was such a kind gesture.
Plenty already, Brad.
Yeah, and yeah, Megan, shout out to her, because I got to play Matt too, and
she won it for you, man.
And it just, yeah, it's incredible. I don't feel deserving of it.
Yeah.
Like you guys have all heard this already. We talked about it, dinner. We talked about it, and when it was given to me, and it's just a testament to the community that we've talked about this entire podcast now tonight in multiple ways of giving back. And this is the first time I've been the recipient of giving back to it. And I didn't ask for it. I didn't expect it. I tried to refuse it, and you guys wouldn't let me. And I'm so grateful for it.
You said we talked about it. We didn't. Everyone just on their own decided before they got there, basically, that we were playing for Brad today, and that this is whatever we got. And it was almost comical because Kirsten was like, when she got top cut, she got it, and she was like, we're giving it to Brad for sure. And then Ron looked at us and he was like, you're giving it to Brad? let's give it to Brad. Well, Vince doesn't have one. Vince needs one too. We get Vince to get one, and then Megan came over with hers and was like, Brad. No.
Megan tried to give me her card
and
too.
then goes Vince. No, okay. And then, so she was like, "Well, all right. Well, I'm gonna go win a playmat for him then too." Like we were all just like trying to fight to win for
It's
each
too
other.
generous.
You know, who hadn't gotten. We want That's how a lot of this started. Is I did not want my friends to pay $600 for a Stitch card. So I was like, if I can win them, so they can get them for free or as cheap as possible.
How many do you and Ron give away in that?
One
event?
each.
Two?
But there's two
like,
total, and then we got
at
better,
time,
and there was more to win.
Almost a 1.5K at that time, right? For you guys, you set the precedent, with doing that's why Ryan Miller, when you told him that story about the second chance stuff, why he was like, I love this game. I appreciate you guys for doing that. So here's this Mickey to do it in your next one. Like I feel like when we talk about this event, we kind of gloss over the context in which
February
he gave
8th.
us that.
And I mean, Andy and I have talked ad nauseum about like, how do we make this event so accessible for folks so that people don't have to spend a ton of money to participate and get it and stuff. So we didn't want it tied to that. But one thing I just want to point out, Brad, and so because I, a lot like you, used to be the same way of not accepting the kindness from folks. It's like you did earn it. You earned it in a different way because both Ryan and I were joking tonight that it's like the gift of friendship is how you won that card. And I said this when you left the other night that even though it's like I kind of like started this whole mayor meme and stuff, the reason it sticks is because people do view you as this like beacon of hope in our community and positivity. And you go to all these stores and stuff, and like we wouldn't know some of these people in our community, and they wouldn't know other stores if you didn't travel and go to these places. And so it's like I remember I was sitting there at the computer yesterday, like joking. I was like if you get a scar, I'll take one. But then I was like no, please make sure Brad is the key component here because you've been talking about wanting the scar from the get-go, and everybody wanted to make sure that you got it, and you were going to get it one way or another from somebody.
It's so kind, and I love and appreciate you guys for doing that. And it's one of those things that I kind of felt to give a shout out to Craig, another great community member here. He told me either at the last launch at Azurite Sea or the last set championship we did, he showed up for. And he said, it kind of stuck with me. He goes, Brad, we don't usually see him at game night, right? And he showed up. He goes, what? I show up to these things for you, and I'm like, Craig, that's too kind. I thought he was just saying it, in being nice or whatever. But then there's a little bit of truth to it, I think too, based how you said that and Craig saying that is because I try to promote a welcoming community and have these events in every way I possibly can. Like we just had a new player tonight. We both, played games with and teaching and get him on the Discord.
That's why
we
we're
can be more
recording this
familiar
at
with
midnight
everything.
right now because Brad was busy teaching someone to play Lorcana.
It's true.
Nice.
I would have been here a half an hour sooner, but he was having so much fun playing the Broom
deck. He was actually a really great player. I hope I want to get
his name was Aiden, and I think he's gonna stick around. So I hope that's the case, and I hope we get more new players like that because it's fostering this community that we have. And I hear about the other ones that Jordan runs in Oregon, the healthcare. Luminaire Healthcare Companion and Sarah and everybody out there on the West Coast, that just like there's these the Muses down in Arizona. I was listening to Citizens of Lorcana today talking about their community. It's just incredible hearing about all the different places that this game has had such a positive impact on people, and I'm happy. Like the mayor thing is funny, but like I'm happy to try to bring everybody together and have these kind of things. And
Brad thinks I'm joking when I say that we made it mayor local,
it's coming
national,
global.
Yeah, come global.
El Presidente Brad.
Before we even had a
one-
podcast, he's introducing me to B Squared in Chicago as
the mayor.
and I'm like, he
The
doesn't
mayor.
know what that means. But now I've had conversations with him, and he knows that. He remembered that interaction. I'm like,
Look,
what is happening? Like,
we may have lost Jesus and possibly soon Vince to the card game that shall not be named. But Jesus did tell me, he was like, the Lorcana community is 1,000 times better. Like, he likes the game, and there's nothing wrong with the Star Wars community or any of these other communities, but the Lorcana community is just leagues above every
have
other.
you been on a Star Wars forum about the movies? We can't get into it tonight. We're already running.
No,
long,
we're
but-
already running late, and there's
like-
a lot I can say
like
that
a
I would never
Han
get.
Solo deck versus whoever the other guy is deck, whoever gets to go first. Like, it's not decided by dice roll. It's decided by like argument over the lore.
Yeah, over
who
Bible,
shot
yeah.
for? Who
I'll
shot
just
first?
say this: you've no risk of me leaving Lorcana for another game. I will say that.
Same here.
Yeah,
I
I may
many
dabble, but I cannot commit. Brad knows why. I kind of walked him through the whole collecting side of Star Wars Unlimited.
not a chance.
And
Not a chance.
Not a chance in hell. But yeah, so I just want to say I really appreciate everybody here in the Lorcana community. We appreciate you, Andy, Kirsten, for the generosity that you guys have at like providing for these second chance events with Ron and Britt and Megan now, and just everybody who's donated pricing for past events and future events. I'm gonna miss a whole bunch of folks. And
So many people.
because there's just so many people that are eager to help us out, just to make it better. Because
Every
what we want to
prize.
do is just make it better for folks in the future, have more opportunities to get things that folks can't do. I mean, I look at Ron again, who set aside a bunch of promos for us to get from the NACC so that we could get that. I wouldn't have that Cusco if it weren't for him to do that. You wouldn't have a Cusco Baymax, and I think you got a Cusco and Baymax as well, Andy. So we got
this awesome prizing to give out at a future event.
not at the 1.5K.
Not at the 1.5K,
Yeah,
at a
it's for
future event.
That's locked in.
Yeah,
We need pricing for future events. So I just want to say.
absolutely.
But yeah, so just really wanted to start off by saying that because that was kind of
Yes.
the
Thank
big
you.
thing.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to also give a shout out those to our community member Alec Runge, who got a shout out on the Forbidden Mountain podcast actually today on Monday. So we're recording on Monday night. Go back to Monday for the blue steel deck. He got second place at Grapes on, which is very similar to the Harlan Sweet deck that they wanted to align with, and they talked about.
Don't
So-
cut him short. He also got first place the
day
day
before.
before at Fortuna.
Yes.
All right,
So in fairness, the Forbidden Mountain, I think, looked at tournaments that were over 30 people. And like, listen, if there are 30 people at Fortuna, we're sitting on people's laps. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, there is
Especially since they took out the picnic tables in the side room and put it in booths. Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you can fit less people in there now.
it's the point is though that, like, you know, he can, you know, it can get
Absolutely.
first,
I don't-
second. It did really well.
Yeah.
So.
And we are going to
We
have a winners interview with a bunch of folks
Yeah.
later on.
We've been we're gonna release some content hopefully this week. Actually, might actually have already seen it before this
Maybe.
video comes out,
Maybe.
but we're gonna talk to some of the local winners.
But let's talk a little briefly about kind of the weekend and stuff. So there were a bunch of tournaments kind of in the area. Is there anything that stood out to you, Andy?
I mean, for one, there's a lot of people running a lot of spicy things these days. I think the same concept that we were saying before. You already win the card. You decide, I don't need to play this anymore. I'll let other people get a chance at winning it, or I'll stay home and do chores or something. You know, people are like, well, I already got a play mat or a card. I don't need to, you know, go as hard. And so maybe I play something more fun. So this stupid, ridiculous Baja Blast the Clarabelle bend to my will nonsense that we saw Hunter play. It's all over the place, mate. It's everywhere. And I'm just, it's such a high roll that like, it's kind of like playing against Diablo almost, that like when they hit the nuts draw, you're just kind of like, yeah, cool. This is the thing. That's cool. But when they don't, you just everywhere. You just feel like you're playing against a starter deck when they don't hit their combo.
You know what isn't everywhere though?
What?
Ruby Steel.
Yeah.
Mill asterisks.
Let me tell you about that Ruby Steel, Andy, in your top 16 performance at game night. Out of all 27 decks, the spicy meter, yours is NA at the max range. It's not even 100%. It's NA, not applicable.
Oh, I wish they
highest I think is 67% with Ryan Hines in third place with his Amber Seal aggro. You
Which
are maxed out spicy. At NA.
Yeah, this is giga spicy. And I think I could have made it slightly better, but I did try and stay true. So I had one Maui Half Shark and one Whole New World in there, and I believe I was over 60 cards, so that I could, in theory, mill them. But those cards were definitely holding me back. But ultimately, what I kind of, in testing all of this, I went into like this theory that steel is essentially the best color in the current meta, and that the steel package that we have is great. And I was like, well, you know, let's just try with all these different colors. And Ruby honestly isn't one of the best ones. Ruby just doesn't bring a lot to the party. Doesn't have great 1-drops. The Moana's not bad. The 2-drops are just non-existent. It's Flynn or nothing, and he's not great.
Just to be clear, so I was sitting next to Andy the entire time while doing this, and he's like, yep, this is more evidence to my thesis on how steel is the best ink in this meta. And then he was like, I think actually Amethyst might be the worst pairing with steel. And then I was like,
now Ruby is.
What about Ruby?
Yeah,
and he was
Ruby
like,
is.
well.
I haven't tried to build the Amethyst one the way I would, towards my thesis, essentially. But, you know, you need to bring good value cards to the deck. And Sisu is not a bad one, although with the aggro in the meta, decks like the Diggy deck and the Harlan Suite, or the Alec deck, as we call it around here in St. Louis, have no cards in their hand. They have just good characters on the board, and they're winning. So it's like, you know, Sisu doesn't do as great. Prince Eric is a great card. If you have a Ruby deck and you want to go a little faster, consider Prince Eric. It's great for big Sisu protection as well. But yeah, I got what, like 14th or 13th or something. I was one game off. Yeah.
You if you had 2-0'd in that final match, you would have been in the end. It kind of was just it was like the worst of all possible matchups.
Yeah.
I think for that deck.
Yeah, it's some good lineups. But yeah, like I said, Ruby doesn't bring as much to the table, so I wasn't able to go fast enough against like Ruby Sapphire. And they were able to get much more control over it.
Right.
I also drew a Whole New World in that game, so you know, that card shouldn't have been in the deck. It was bad. And then,
so what you're saying is our original thesis about Ruby Steel Mill, don't try it.
Yeah, no, it's not great.
Not yet.
It's fun when you do it and it works. It's fun. But it just really, Ruby Steel isn't the greatest. Kirsten's been trying it as well, but I can tell you that Emerald Steel is extra spicy these days. So I'll make sure there's a link in the description. I took first/second. We split the prizing at a 16-person, was it?
Yeah, it was close to that at Yeti Gaming here in St. Louis.
However, that had a North American Continental qualifier was in that event. I lost to him, but you know, still he was there. Jesus, former great Lorcana player, now mid Lorcana player because he plays Star Wars. That's right, I'm calling you out, Jesus. No, he's actually still really good, but it had, you know, Ron, Britt, all the regular Rules of Villainy folks there and stuff. Vince was there briefly. I think he departed a little early.
Yeah, I did depart a little
like
early.
two rounds and left.
2 rounds. I should have stayed for
stayed.
third round, but
3 and 2 made it in right here.
that's my bad. That's my bad.
But yeah, the Emerald Steel, same concept. Great steel cards, just run the good Emerald ones. And Emerald has honestly a lot of pretty good cards that you want to put in there. A lot of vanilla cards that are extra spicy. I won't go too much into it because I think I'm going to add some of that into our, set champs top decks video. So we'll have Kirsten, myself, and a couple other winners, Alec, and talking about their different decks that have brought them success in these tournaments. But yeah, check
My
that out.
interview with Alec might need a little editing. We did that tonight.
Yeah, we talked about it.
I'm sure we will.
One of the things I'll say is it was pretty easy in other set champs to be like, this is what you need to bring to do well. Or there was like a set of decks that you could expect going in. It's just, man, it's like, you name it, it's there. Okay, so I've got Amethyst Steel. Okay, well, I've got several Amethyst Steel. I've got an aggro version. I've got a mid-range version and stuff. It's like you see this with Amber Steel. You've got an aggro version and a more song-heavy kind of version of these decks. You've got the Baja Blast. You've got all of these kind of interesting decks out there. Some perform better than others. But a lot of it's match dependent and stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say probably the biggest thing about this current meta is one is just being very good at the deck you choose and knowing the potential matchups and lineups. So I think actually what's more challenging about this meta is just, when you sit down to a person, it's like, okay, I now have to really think further out about what they have because there's a wider potential possibility of cards to be played.
Got to get luckier too, honestly.
And you gotta get, and that's the second thing I was gonna say is you gotta get
better
luckier.
lucky than good, right?
Yeah, which the mantra we say.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there anything else we want to talk about?
I do, yeah. It was really fun. Craig, you never know what he's going to play, but when he does show up, whatever he's playing, he plays it very, very well. I was expecting Amethyst Steel as I think one of his go-tos, and I seen him experiment with some Emerald Steel or Emerald Amethyst. I think it was Emerald Steel before, but no, he came up with a spicy Amber Steel this time. And always fun playing Craig. Like as I mentioned earlier, great member of the community, always fun to play. And he likes to. I should expect it by now that it should always be Steel because I think one of his favorite things to do, and it gets me every time now, is that on turn 1 or 2, whatever I play is going to be banished because he has to hit me with a Triton's Decree. He does it. I think when I did...
I walked by that match. He's like, you didn't expect that card coming?
Yeah, and I never do. But no,
it just cracked me up.
He didn't do it in game 1, so that I wasn't expecting at all. And he managed to take game 1 on the draw. It was really funny. We started off the game. I rolled doubles 3 times in a row. I rolled double 1s and he let me re-roll. And I'm like, no, Craig, you're going to go first. You get the pick. He's like, no, do it again. Then I rolled double 6s. And I was like, do you want to roll against that? But what I wanted to really comment on, aside from him playing very, very well, is that that I came into game night. I decided to run the Harlan Sweet Blue Steel deck. And this was my first time actually running it.
Steel.
I guess in St.
As
Louis,
it's colloquially known
Alec
in the St. Louis area. Yep.
But technically, though, Alec did make one adjustment to the initial deck, so I was running Harlan's proper.
Okay.
So maybe Alec perfected it with his win. I should have ran the Alec one. You're right. Tangent, but so I'm running that. I decided I probably should have ran this last week. I'm going to run it today because I didn't want to run my Red Faucet deck into a 2-game format thing, and I made a lot of mistakes that looking back on, I don't know how much it would have affected, but like one of the common things, like something I wanted to address here as we champion playing certain decks and knowing, trying to give people advice on playing decks is get some reps in and get familiar with it. Cause I made some really goofy mistakes that I think might have I definitely cost myself a draw in the second game. I don't know that I could have won the first game, but the big mistake I made in the first game was questing a big Robin Hood instead of dealing with his board and still getting the 2 lore. Because
Sheesh.
I had a Pluto on board, and I quested the Robin Hood and whatever else was behind the Pluto. And then like 2 turns later, I'm like, his board is so wide, and I could have dealt with like the Calhoun or something with Robin Hood, and it didn't even occur to me.
Huge.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where I'm like, wow, Brad, if you had any more experience with this deck, or the last 3 sets where Robin Hood existed, you would have remembered that thing. And it was just like just a speed thing, probably thinking before or not thinking before acting. Those kind of things are where you get tripped up in these kind of tournaments. Me especially, overthinking or not thinking clearly enough or moving too fast. So I wanted to point that out as an example of what not to do, because we talk about all the time what you should do, and I make those kind of mistakes. And game two, I had 2 manners on board and a couple other characters that would get me to 19. And what I decided to do was, he was running a spicy, the mini, 1/5 mini that banishes anything with 5 strength enough. So my Plutos became obsolete. He didn't even have to run into Pluto. He could just play that mini, and it worked very effectively. But on game 2, the very last play, I decided that I'm going to have to control his board and then just let my manners get me to win. So I decided I have an Alice in hand and I have a Baboom in hand, and I could ink the Baboom and play the Alice, which would have given me the win the next turn. But instead I decided I need to shoot that mini because I need to take it out with Pete next turn or something or whatever. But he went wide, he dealt with whatever, and then I realized, oh, my win condition was just inking the Baboom and playing the Alice. So another one of those things that, had I more experience with this deck and play lines, I could have got out of that game with a draw. But instead Craig got the 2-0, much deserved to. Just testament to Craig's ability to play the game. He's our resident drafter. He loves drafting every Saturday morning. So he knows these cards like the back of his hand.
Sealed.
Very, very good player. I wanted to give him a shout out for always having a fun and enjoyable game, even though, maybe I look a little peeved afterwards and those tough losses like that. It's not because of you, Craig. I love you to death. It's because of my disappointment in myself and my my inability to recognize. I mean, I'm recognizing the mistakes now, but not in the moment where it was, where I could have prevented it. Right. So,
yeah.
But Craig Cat walked away with a 2-0 there, and it was, I went on to draw my next couple games, and then it ultimately didn't make the top cut, but we already addressed the the generosity of the team for later on in the tournament. But I wanted to call about that game specifically because it was just something we've talked about and wanted to emphasize the importance of knowing your play lines. So
it's a good lesson to get a lot of practice in. Don't recommend taking a deck that you haven't really played much into a match. I think some players can do it, and if you can do it, then maybe do
Alec
that.
did it. You'll find out in our interview with Alec
that you can't do that. Maybe don't. The other thing I'll just also say too is, in this meta in particular, I will find is read the cards. Okay, like what you see, in your opponent, because Andy was running the Minnie Mouse, the
Mickey Mouse, the pirate captain, promo one.
And it's like knowing exactly what those cards do because you don't see them very often. And I'll just throw out too is I think this is why I think Frank Carson said this, that doing draft and sealed can make you a really, really good player, because you learn a lot of the card pool, but you also just get really good practice in figuring out how to get out of or in difficult decisions or thinking about different play lines. And it just kind of makes you a more creative player and stuff, much in the same way, like maybe practicing different like moves in chesses, openings and games in chess.
You learn the value, you get the experience and the value of certain cards. And so more and more I play limited and construction. When I go into these limited matchups and I'm playing these games, I not only am thinking about the game that I'm playing, but I'm also thinking about how this card will interact with other cards that are actually played and constructed in the meta from previous sets. So it's like, oh wow, this card feels really great, but then I look at it and I go, oh, it's got 2 strength, it can just be brawled, and brawl doesn't exist in this limited format, so maybe it's not as great. Or I play this card and I go, wow, this feels really good, and it's not brawlable. Like, maybe this this interaction actually does feel kind of good. And I feel like I wouldn't be surprised to see that some of these more spicy cards, these cards that get added in to these decks, are partially inspired by people's playing them in a limited format of some sort. That's how you discover cards.
Absolutely. Any last thoughts of the main segment?
No, tune in to our YouTube though and watch. We're gonna, like Brad said, we're gonna talk to Alec, get some Blue Steel game or deck game, like talking about what, I don't know what the term is.
We're gonna just have a little interview and we'll talk a little bit about the decks.
Breakdown. That's the word I'm looking for. There we go.
Breakdown.
Deck breakdown. And I'll talk to you guys some more about my spicy Emerald Steel list that honestly I think is the best in the meta right now. Anyway, and we've also got special guest fan favorite Mikey, who honestly may be one of the best Lorcana players in the St. Louis area. He's certainly got the best prizing of any set champs tournament that exists.
That's for sure. All right. Well, with that, we'll move on to Villain of the Week.
All right. Apologies again, too, because
all hail.
Villain of the Week is Pluto Guard Dog from Set 6 Azurite Sea. He is a good boy. 4-cost inkable character, uncommon card in Steel, classification Storyborn and Ally, 1 strength, 5 willpower, quest for 1, bodyguard, and the ability is a good boy. While this character has no damage, he gets +4 strength. The art by Edvig Hagman-Sund.
Yeah, this card's pretty awesome.
Pretty great card. Find it in pretty much almost all the Steel decks.
It's on the Steel, the Set 6 Steel meta, Steel aggro meta Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Maybe not. Maybe Pluto's. I don't know. How many's on Mount Rushmore? 4?
4.
You know what?
I got Smee, Calhoun, Lawrence, Pluto, and Gantu. But apparently one doesn't get. One doesn't get to make it. So.
Well, maybe there's extra space.
Maybe there is.
Maybe on the Disney Lorcana Mount Rushmore, there's extra space.
Mount Waltmore.
What I wanted to ask Andy is, what about Mono Steel? Where does that rank in your Steel thesis?
I just think there's not enough good Steel cards. So
below Ruby Steel or above Ruby Steel?
For 300 subscribers, we'll find out in the next set championship.
No.
I think we would need to hit 500.
Yeah. First off, the next deal we're making here is for 500 subscribers because YouTube has a bar in our studio thing that fills up to 500. So something will happen when we hit that, and I want to know what it is, and I need your guys' help to do that. So the next deal we make is going to be to 500. So start subscribing now to like get closer. But no, I think if Mono Steel was like good enough, I'd probably have just played it instead of Ruby Steel, and the only Ruby card would just be the Half Shark. But like I think it just doesn't have enough cards in it. But the closer, the worse the pairing color is, like Ruby, the closer it is to Mono Steel because there's just not as great Ruby cards. There's no good like closers or like finishing out cards either for Ruby. That was one of the things that I felt was really, really powerful about the green Steel, and is also great with the blue Steel and stuff. Besides the early game cards where you want to be able to play something like a Merfolk or a Daisy or as your Smees, your Calhouns obviously, and then your Alices or your Lawrence or whatever it is, to then be blocked, to be like protected by this Pluto. You also need those late game finishers like the Gantu. Right. And I think Emerald just has like this great hodgepodge of awesome cards that I just kept looking at, thinking, "Wow, should be awesome." But Pluto's our good boy of the day, and honestly, like, he's really annoying, really annoying to have to deal with. If I'm playing an aggro list versus an aggro list, and they put the Pluto down, it's almost like when they put a Manor down or something. You just have no choice but to ignore it and move on. Just ignore it and just pedal to the metal and hope you can outrun them, because it is a pain in the butt to deal with.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard card to remove because it's a 5/5 until it has the damage.
Yep.
And then even when you do get damage on it to make it a 1/5, it's still a 5 strength or 5 willpower character on the board. So it's still got a big butt for it to try to remove. And so, in a lot of the cards, because the metas move so much faster, you're having to swing multiple characters into it to try to deal with it. And then you still got to then deal with anything behind it potentially as well. So later in the game, maybe it's it kind of depends on what deck you're going against. Cause like if you're going against maybe a Ruby Sapphire or Ruby Amethyst deck, they can get into the Medusa territory by reducing its strength, but still
double ice block. You're gonna double ice block a Pluto and Medusa.
Yeah, you could. I mean, in Ruby Sapphire, you could theoretically. I mean,
pretty wild.
Kind of depends on how.
Mostly Maui trade. It'll trade the Maui, right? Or the most annoying part, like you said, is they just send like a broom or something small into it, and then they send something bigger into it. But it guarantees a 1-for-1 at least, because it's gonna take out that first thing that hits into it.
But you're really hoping that other things that are going to advance your win conditions survive. Yeah. So like if it can, if you can save your Gontu one more turn, right? That's a whole, that could be game. That's a 4 lore. Even your 2 lore characters in a lot of these aggro decks, if you have several of them, the more that those survive, the more you're putting pressure on your opponent. You pair that with things like a Pete to make action removal. Like, granted, that's a lot of lore to put out, but if you can get, say, Pluto out and then play Pete the next turn, you can kind of protect against things like board wipes,
Alice,
and actions and stuff. So
Alice used on the Pluto. It's the same concept.
Yep.
I think we saw Alec do it a couple times where he would quest the Alice, forego the additional lore, and give the ward to the Pluto to make sure it couldn't be pinged with like damage. You just ping it with a fire the cannons or something, and now it's a lot easier to clear.
Yeah.
Or let it go or something like that.
Yeah, I used to do that same thing for my genies in Blurple. Was tag forego the 1 lore to stop him from being brawled on turn 4. But
the Pluto, I think at 4 as well, is a really great slot for him. It's mostly steel, but you can build up a really nice board. That when you play the Pluto down, you are protecting potentially 3 2-questers. I mean, in Amber Steel, you're looking at Daisy, Smee, and then Lawrence, and then a Pluto, and then you immediately quest for, you probably quested the Daisy, and it was okay. And then you potentially can quest the Daisy and the Smee again without really any threat to it, depending on who you're playing against. But you also just leave it unexerted. Quest for 6, play the Pluto. Chances are they get the Pluto with 2 of their characters and maybe 1 other. And then, these games with these steel aggro matchups, I feel it's very heavily math based. You really, really have to think out 1 to 2 turns ahead. And there's been so many of these games where I just looked at my hand and I looked at the board and I went 1, 2, 3, 4, and I counted them out and I went, if I quest with these, they're dispensable, they're disposable. I will quest with them. They will spend their time dealing with them. I will play another character that they statistically most likely cannot deal with. I will get the quest with that one, and I will make it to 20 in X amount of turns, and there's really nothing they can do about it. And so, Pluto helps you get to that sort of that mark.
I really do think Pluto makes the aggro decks significantly more viable in the meta long term. Because, we've seen this every set where aggro fires off and then it kind of dies relatively quickly into the meta. This is really, Azurite Sea is the first set that we've seen aggro really stick around. And stuff, obviously there's going to be some exceptions to that. I'm not like making a play, but like we're seeing a lot of aggro decks, and I think Pluto is a card that really makes that possible because what typically tends to happen with these aggro decks is they run out of steam because you're able to answer the threats on the board. They don't have a lot of card draw, and so they're not able to like then counter answer or be able to do that. Now you can still run aggro out of gas, right? By running them out. But the problem is like with things like Pluto and yes, obviously there are other cards that are filling hands that I do think also help make aggro more viable. And we've already talked, I think, ad nauseum about Doc in a previous podcast. But I think Pluto is another key component that makes those aggro decks viable. You pair that with the Doc with extra card draw. You get this, you put this on board. Folks have to answer this. It's a turn 4 5/5 that your opponent now has to answer. That's protecting, like you said, not just one, not just two, but probably 3 2-lore characters, or at least 3 2-lore potential characters with Calhoun on board. Right. So you're putting a lot of pressure on your opponent to have to answer your board at any given state. And that makes this guy a good boy if you're playing him. Makes him a real bad boy if you're playing against him.
Yeah. And Craig teching in that Minnie Mouse, like he starts as a 5/5, so he just plays his own bodyguard Minnie Mouse, who's a 1/5, stays a 1/5, but because he has 5 strength, he's automatically banished. And I was like, welp, that just set me way back.
Yeah, I do want to say, and we'll try and coin this. Maybe it's burying the lead, given that we're like an hour and 56 minutes into this podcast or whatever. But I don't think we should call these aggro decks, because there's definitely a distinction between the decks that are incredibly fast, and maybe they would be called hyper aggro. I like to call these curve decks. I think these are on curve decks. They play very heavily on curve. You want to play a good character on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you just want to play 2 good characters at the 2 drops, or like a 1 drop and a 2 drop. You just good characters on curve, spending all of your ink, and then your chances are you're at a point where even if you are top decking, when you're pulling those good value 4 or 5 drops off the top, you can play them, and there's nothing they can do because you can't remove the Gantu, and all hail, he gets you 4 lore, and you win the game. So I just want to point that out. Not aggro, curve. It's a curve deck.
Yeah, not sure I'm sold, but
well, you don't have to be. We don't need your your money. It's not good here anyway.
I think of the cologne. You remember Curve cologne, like back in high school?
No,
is that still a thing?
What?
No.
I have no
I didn't
idea.
wear cologne back in high school.
I didn't either. I just remember it existed, and when you keep saying Curve, I'm like, I remember that. But anyway, it's late. It's after midnight, guys.
Well, I think that's it. With that, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, just a quick shout out to the artist Hedvig Hogman's son. They are Vixie Arts on Instagram, vixiearts.com. They have 14 cards in the game right now. 2 of them are enchanted. It's the Pete from set 2, the Simba from set 1.
No
and what I thought was no, different Pete. The Pete from set 2. What I thought was also really cool was this Pluto actually is a follow-up art to the Mickey Mouse Night Watch. If you look at it on Dreamboard or in your collection, Pluto's actually in the Mickey Mouse Night Watch as well. So it's not a continuous art, but it's almost like a follow-up art of Pluto protecting Mickey from this whatever's going on around this ship. It was really cool. I just noticed it before the podcast and wanted to point that out. So, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
This card?
Wow,
That's
you
one.
just have, you just have it ready, or was that in the
It's
deck?
in my Ruby Steel deck because
Because it's a 2-quester
So,
on 3.
remember
Because
how you
you're-
talked about when it would be mono steel? Well, what would happen is you have no other good 3 red drops, and so you find a card like Mickey Mouse, which does get brawled, not great, but your character's named Pluto, gain resist +1. So this
I
character
like how
makes
those cards synergize too. Not
Yeah.
only in art but in ability. That's really cool.
it makes the good boy even better. So I never quite got to see that pop off, that combo there, but I think that's another spicy card that
But it's possible.
It's
yeah.
possible.
When you're playing with Ruby and you have no other good cards to put in the deck, it's worth it.
And with that, let us know your thoughts on the villain of the week. We hope you've enjoyed this especially long episode of Rules of Villainy. If you're joining us on audio, please thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a long one. Review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
And if you're joining us on YouTube, which if you're not, you really should, I show stuff on the camera and point in weird directions sometimes. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, follow, hang out, come to our live stream February 8th. Brad.
We understand we understand your time is valuable, especially in a 2-hour podcast. So we appreciate you spending 2 hours of it with us. If you would like to follow along as we plot our devious plans, consider following us on our socials. We're on Instagram, Blue Sky, and the platform formerly known as Twitter at Rules of Villainy. We also have a growing community on Discord in which you can join with the link below.
I'd promise our future episodes would be shorter, but then I'd just be lying to you as we lie to ourselves each week. So until next week, stay safe, fellow villains, and be wary of wannabe heroes who want to disrupt your villainous plans. And as always, remember the rules of villainy.